Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, Nightshift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
All right, Fearless Freedom family, we are back. And guess what? Oh my gosh, I cannot believe this. We have an international guest with us today. It is Dr. Siobhan Key, and she is coming to us from Canada.
Yay!
So, Dr. Key, can you tell us all about yourself?
Sure. So I am a family physician working in northern British Columbia, Canada. So not even just Canada, but like up north Canada. And I do full service family practice. So that means I do like our office work, hospital work, and deliver babies. Used to do Emerge. I know you're Emerge. I had to stop after my third kid, trying to combine an Emerge schedule in with all that. It started to not be, but I miss it. Emerge medicine is so much fun.
It's fun.
Hard.
It is hard, but it is fun. You're right.
And so I do a lot of different things, and something that evolved for me as I was kind of, had been doing family practice for a while is I started to build an interest in helping people make lifestyle changes, because I realized in family medicine, there's so many things that we talk about on a daily basis over and over and over again, and things that we manage that if we could help people make changes in their own life better, their health would be so much better than me just writing a new prescription and refilling a prescription each time. And I realized that what I was taught in medical school didn't actually help any patients. Like, we were in my medical school anyways, we were taught just tell people eat less, exercise more. Like your diabetes is out of control, well, just lose weight. Your back pain's out of control, well, just lose weight. But we weren't actually taught tools on how to help patients do that. And I realized that my advice that I'd been giving people just, eat less, exercise more. I couldn't think of a single patient that had come back and thanked me for my fantastic advice over the years of practice that I had been in.
Wow.
And I realized and at that point too, I was struggling with my own weight. So medical school, residency, I think a lot of us experience this. It doesn't give you a lot of time to do self-care or think about, eating healthy or meal plan. Like you're so much in just survival mode. And then, new practice and being a new grad isn't really all that much easier. Like we think it will be.
But yeah, you definitely think that. You're like, I'm going to have all the time in the world.
Not so much. And, you do have an element of control over your schedule, but you also have so many requests on your time it didn't get any better. And so I had been just gradually gaining weight through medical school residency, and I'd tried different things to get some weight off or to get a handle on it, and hadn't been very successful myself. And so along the same lines, I was thinking, like, if everything I learned in medical school isn't actually helping me, like if I can't take it and apply it, how would I expect a patient to benefit from it?
Right.
And so it was like those dual purposes that kind of spurred me to start to look for better options. And at this point, I didn't even know that there was a specialty called obesity medicine. I was literally Googling like physician weight loss conferences, and like just trying to find, it's like somewhere out there must be somewhere where people will just talk and like talk about where the evidence is and what the tools are and stuff like that. And that's how I found obesity medicine as a specialty. And so I started to get interested in it, started to go to some conferences and build my own knowledge base with obesity medicine. And I started a practice, or not a practice, a group or a program within my own practice for what I call weight management. So helping patients learn how to manage their own weight and manage their own chronic conditions using that. And it's based on group medical visits, because there's only one of me. And
Right.
I'm the only, well, actually a new grad just passed her obesity medicine. But before that, for the past few years, I'm the only person in my community or Northern BC that
Wow.
does obesity medicine.
So you had to have quite an influx of referrals then.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's building. Like, I'm getting to the point where I think I'm going to have a hard time keeping up. But I think it's been slow because people didn't, again, like in Canada, so when we get certified in obesity medicine, we have to certify in the States, because
Okay.
Canada doesn't have a similar, like there's no board of obesity medicine. And so I think it's not known. It's becoming better known, but the average physician doesn't even know that it's a specialty. And I
Okay.
think there have been physicians that do weight loss, but it's often like the beta HCG diet, or, things that are not so evidence-based as what obesity medicine is.
Okay.
So that if we're talking about fear, like, starting.
Yes, let's talk about fear. Yes, let's get into it.
Taking that step was fear-inducing, because it was, it's like when you go into a specialty like family medicine or any other, I think our minds tend to think in terms of a little, a unit, like this is what family medicine is, blop.
Right.
And this is what you do if you're a family doctor. And so to step outside and go, I think maybe I would like to do it differently. And I think I would like to do this, which, again, I think Canada's behind in obesity medicine, in that there's still in medical, there's still a lot of weight stigma, like viewing obesity as the patient's issue and not so much a chronic medical disease, like what we view it as in obesity medicine. And so stepping out and saying, I think these patients need medical help, was not something that people in our community had really heard of before.
So there's so it sounds like you were literally going against the grain, right?
A little bit. And then particularly when I decided that I thought the lower carb approach was probably the most effective approach and the one I was going to use, that was it totally kind of fearful, like to take a stance for something that's not in the Canadian guidelines anyways. It's in the US guidelines, it's there, but not in the Canadian yet. And to take a stance and say, I think we've been doing it wrong. Like, the food guide isn't actually helping people who metabolically aren't healthy or who have obesity. And wondering if people, like, it hasn't happened yet, but I really wondered if people would get mad at me. Like if I would have, dietitians or other people quite angry at me promoting a lower carbohydrate approach to eating, which is interesting. It's interesting because it could happen, because food stuff is very polarizing. I don't know if you...
Yeah, all right, it is.
Like people have
adamant about their food.
I know they have very strong opinions about what the correct way of eating is. And I find it like it's interesting because I do believe in a lower carb approach for people in some form. And so that means like probably most of us shouldn't be eating sugar, and most of us shouldn't be eating a lot of processed starches. If you're wanting to lose weight anyways, they're probably not helping. And how far you take it from there, I think depends on your body and how it responds and your personal preferences and all that stuff. But, it's interesting to watch. If you're online at all, you'll see the kind of the war waged between like low carb camps and vegan camps and, all those different groups. And I think it's just, you have to figure out what works for you.
That's right. Because, no matter what the diet is, if you're not going to actually not make it a diet, but literally make it your nourishment for life, then it's not going to work, right? I mean, because you're going to do it for a period and then you're going to just stop and then you're going to revert back to where you were before, and sometimes worse. So I think people miss that part. And it sounds like you're saying that, like you're saying it's the more practical aspects of things that we miss when we tell the patients that all you have to do is lose weight and then your diabetes will be better. Or all you have to do is watch what you're doing, and or all you gotta do is lose weight and your COPD will be better, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So having that practical approach, I think, is awesome, you know. And not very many of us do that, and probably because not many of us are trained in obesity medicine, so that might be part of it.
Like, I don't think we were taught what to do, right? Like, we weren't given those skills. And I think, this is where I think there needs to be more obesity treatment available, probably across the North America, at least, definitely in Canada for sure. And I think it needs to be covered. That's a big passion for me because, a lot of people, and the reason why I originally started my weight management program in my office is because it is then covered through our medical services. Because a lot of the patients I was talking to, it's not like I could say, hey, go to Weight Watchers. Like,
Right.
that wasn't a financially viable option for them. And so I believe obesity treatment needs to be covered in insurance plans. And in Canada, anyways, it isn't very well covered. So that's an aside. But so, yeah, I think it just needs to be it has to be practical and it has to be individualized. And physicians need to be taught better skills, or there needs to be more obesity treatment options available. Because, it's one thing to say, hey, your diabetes would be better if you could lose some weight, but then how? And, how do they lose weight in the face of, the stress that they're under, or how to lose
Economics.
weight? Yeah, totally. Or the binge eating disorder that they've struggled with, or the history of trauma that they've had. There's so many different things that play into whether or not somebody might have extra weight on their body that are beyond just like, eat this and go walk. It's such a complicated issue. Anyway, so I started doing that and was really enjoying it. But then what I started to see, so when I started, we were, I was talking about kind of what to eat and all those sorts of things. But what I really noticed is there were people that could just be like, you could say, eat this, and they did great, and they had really good success. And that was great. But then there were the people who maybe initially had success, but then struggled and couldn't keep going. And then there was the people that couldn't even get going, like they had difficulties even starting. And so that's where I started to build an interest in how do we help those people. So that's like a level beyond, here's a diet plan, and if you follow it, you'll lose weight.
Right.
It's all the other stuff, like the emotional eating would be kind of an umbrella term for it. But like, how do you choose to eat the healthier food when the cake's in front of you, and do it with a sense of ease, like do it without the struggle, right? Because if you're choosing the salad over the cake and you're struggling the whole time, that's going to be a really short-lived struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might last the first time, last maybe the second time, depending on your willpower and how busy that particular week has been. But at some point, it'll fade. And so where I started to find tools that actually worked was in life coaching.
Okay.
And so I started to build, listen to a lot of like life coaching type stuff to build skills to bring into my groups. And found those skills to actually be helpful for myself, because as I went through this, I was, like I said, I'd been struggling with my weight. And even when I had my weight management groups going, I had lost some weight, but I was still struggling with it. Like I hadn't totally sorted it out myself. And ironically, sometimes when you start something that's outside of your comfort zone and you have a tendency towards emotional eating,
boy.
Starting a weight management program. And then I found myself like falling back into old behaviors and stuff, all just because of, I think, the stress of doing something new and the self-doubt that comes with that. So I was still kind of struggling myself. And then with the life coach type tools, which are essentially CBT and mindfulness and that sort of stuff, then I started to actually fix some of the real underlying issues that were going on for me, and saw how powerful these tools could be, and started bringing them into my weight management group.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's so awesome about what you just said, Siobhan, is like you talk about like how your personal transformation allowed for you to be able to give to your patients.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more powerful than that, right? So you're literally like walking the walk, so you're not just telling them to do something. You actually are doing it and you're manifesting it in your own life. And that has to be so powerful for those that you're helping.
I hope so. I think of myself as being my guinea pig. Like, if I think of something or read something, I kind of try it out on myself to see if it truly makes sense. And if it's like a practical, like something you can institute before I start doing it with my groups. And it's interesting. So like, I talk openly right now about my weight stuff, but at that time, again, this was the big sort of fear thing that when I reached out is, at that time I was not talking openly about my weight. Like at that time for most of my life, my own weight was a source of, maybe a little bit of shame, but like, just like, it was the thing I hadn't figured out, right? Like it was I'd figured out medicine, I'd figured out all that. And yet I couldn't figure this out. And so, and even here I am doing training in obesity medicine, and I'm still going to the drive-through when I'm stressed out. But I wasn't talking about it because I think that if I talked about it, it was kind of, I listened to your last week's or your most recent podcast, and your guest was talking about imposter syndrome. And I think that plays a role, right? Like if I talked about it, that, hey, I'm still trying to figure this out, then it would make me some form of imposter. Like maybe I shouldn't be doing this work or these groups if I can't figure it out, which I think is silly now looking back, but it was totally.
That's what she felt. I mean, it's natural, this is how we function. And it's funny that because you're referring to Leah Steele, she's our other international guest that was on the show. She's in the UK and you're in Canada. But anyway, so she was talking about that, and she is a high achieving person. You're talking about that, and you're a high achieving person. I've had imposter syndrome. We've all experienced it. It is crazy. But it is all rooted in fear, right? If you really think about it.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember, I remember the first week of medical school, we were all in this one huge lecture hall, having all these different people coming and talking to us about what medical school would be like. And I vividly, we weren't taught about imposter syndrome yet, but I vividly remember kind of being there waiting for somebody to walk down those stairs and
tap you on the shoulder and be like, you're supposed to be here.
Yeah. We just realized there was a clerical error. And and it's happened all along, in Emerge, right? I would say that's the place where I felt it sometimes the most, is standing in Emerge and be looking around really, am I the person that's supposed to be fixing this? Nobody else?
Yeah, indeed. No, it's real. It's real. But that is the fact that it sounds like at the time that you were going through it, you did not appreciate that, the fear and the label, I guess, of imposter syndrome, but you were able to work through it regardless. What do you think it was? What allowed you to be able to do that?
To work through it? I think the coaching skills, really recognizing how I was thinking about stuff and how that was impacting my actions and what was happening. So all that self-doubt, all that fear wasn't coming from anybody around me. It was coming from me thinking I'm not good enough, or I could only do this if I had figured out my weight, or they would only want somebody who has figured out their weight to teach them, right? There was all these different thoughts that nobody had ever said. They're just stories my brain made up. And so learning that and really building an awareness of what I'm thinking and how it's impacting me started to make change. And then I think then it really started to make change where I'm why wouldn't I do something? Why not? Just because there's fear involved, that doesn't really have to be a reason to not do it. And so I had this whole time, because back when I was really struggling with my own weight, I had tried to find somebody to help me who knew what it was like to be a physician, knew what it was like to do the call we do, work when we're, sleep deprived, all the stuff that we do, deal with the, highly emotional, stressful things that we see on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to find somebody who understood that to help me figure out myself. And I couldn't at that time. That was like probably 5 years ago or so. And so during my obesity medicine training, I was always thinking, how could I turn this and use it to help other physicians? So that, if there's other people out there who are having that same experience of thinking, like, I should have figured this out. Like, this is the sort of the last thing to figure out. Why can't I? That I could help them in a way of, understanding where they're at work-wise, and understanding the impact that has on eating behaviors and weight and everything like that. And so in this past fall, when I was doing a lot of kind of self-coaching type stuff, I started to think, why don't I just start helping them? Like, why don't I start doing some coaching? And decided that one way because the difficulty with, like, I think life coaching, you can kind of put yourself out and say, hey, I'm a life coach. Are you stressed out? Weight stuff is often so much more personal that, like, you can't walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm a weight coach.
How can I help you with your weight? Are you saying I'm fat?
It's not appropriate, right? So I was trying to figure out, okay, if I'm going to do this, how will people find me? Like, how would I get my name out and let people know what I'm about and let people know that this is even an option? So that's where I came up with the idea of my own podcast that I started in January, called Weight Solutions for Physicians, which is focused for physicians working on their weight. There's stuff in there about low carb stuff, but a lot of the content that I do is the, like, CBT, mindfulness, coaching techniques about how do you actually, if you think you know what you need to eat to lose weight, how do you actually get yourself to do that consistently, regardless of what your week ends up looking like? Because we all know our weeks can change very quickly. They can vary a lot. But how do you keep yourself on track, even in a week that, like, goes to heck, right? Mm-hmm. And I think those are really important skills. And that's been super fun. But if we want to talk about fear, as you know, starting up a podcast and talking about some of the stuff that makes you feel most vulnerable is hugely fear-inducing.
Oh, yeah. You're putting yourself out there. You're putting your voice out there. You are literally just putting yourself out there.
But it's been great. Like, I think it's been one of the best things I've probably done. Like, the people I've gotten to talk to and the people I've gotten to meet.
Oh, yeah.
And hearing back now, like, hearing from people where they're finding benefit and they're finding that it's helpful. All of that's, like, very rewarding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But those initial, like, I was a little crazy, like, that initial month.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, it definitely, it's always that ripping that Band-Aid off is always the toughest part. But once you get going, it's really fun. And I don't want people to think that, oh my gosh, they should go start a podcast. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you have a message that you would like to get out, or you are curious about something and you want to learn more about it, a podcast is a great way to learn about it. So even if you don't have your own, you literally can get on someone else's podcast and just chat. It's just amazing when we are able to connect on this level. I mean, for crying out loud, I'm in Michigan and you're in BC. I mean, that's, like, amazing that we're just chatting right now as if we're at the coffee shop having coffee or tea. So no, it's fun. It is fun. So once you get past that initial fear of pressing, if you're on Libsyn or whatever the company, whatever you're using for your platform, pressing send to, like, submit your podcast and then get going with the first couple episodes, then after that, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really love having a podcast, and I find, like, my brain is constantly coming up with ideas and stuff about it, which is, it's fun. And you know what, I enjoy having, like, a project outside of medicine for my brain to kind of think about, where, it's not always medicine in the office that it's thinking about. It can kind of think about this, which is just it has its own stresses, but it's a different speed or a different kind of path, a different piece of my brain working on it, which is fun.
The creative side of you comes out. I mean, it's really what happens, right? I mean, we suppress it often because medicine is very, very controlled, I would say. Because you have these patterns that you recognize and then you do something about it based on, patterns in the past and how they've been addressed. So this is what medicine is, So when you have something where you can literally like utilize that other side of your brain, that right side, is it the right side? That's the creative side? I can never remember which side it is. Oh, it's terrible. I don't remember which side, but whatever side is the creative side.
I think it's the right side is the creative side.
So we get to utilize the right side. It just is very liberating. And the bonus is that it helps us with managing our burnout, right?
Yeah,
so many of us are going through it, have gone through it. And it is a great way to have that balance, that integration where you have an outlet, a creative outlet, and it's fun.
Absolutely. And I think so through the years, I have experienced burnout kind of like this. And for those of you not on video, I'm doing
a wave for her hand.
I found through most of my work, I did there'd be periods where you're like, yeah, no problem. I can do that. Yeah, sure. I'll do that. I'm feeling great. Yeah. Okay. That needs to get done. Sure. I'll do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap. I don't want to do any of it. And have a period of burnout. And it used to be, as a newer grad, those peaks and valleys would be a lot higher and steeper. Now, and I think what's helped is a lot of the coaching, I've had different life coaches, and the coaching I'm doing with myself. And then I'm now in a life coach certification program. And so again, that helps build my own skills. But through managing that stuff, I've been able to build more of a consistent pattern, though that I still experience burnout. I just think I recognize it faster.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so it doesn't end up quite so bad. It just ends up okay, I need to kind of change stuff slightly, and I don't have to correct quite as big because I'm recognizing it earlier. So I can just make, small adjustments. Like these past couple of weeks, I've actually been feeling a bit burnt out. And I think that's kind of all this, working on building a coaching business for the physicians dealing with weight and doing the podcast on top of all the other stuff. I think it kind of caught up to me these last couple of weeks. But really what I need to do is, I realized I just wasn't doing my self-care stuff in the same consistency as what I usually do. I do my best when I wake up in the morning early and I have some time to myself. I do a bit of meditation, journal, do a bit of thinking before all the other stuff starts coming in my mind and clouding it up, and get a bit of a run in and all that sort of stuff. And so I've just gotten back to that, and I think it'll be fine and it'll sort itself out, just with making that little bit of a correction.
Yeah, the recognition piece is key, that's the thing that a lot of people just don't know. I didn't know when I was going through it, I had no clue, but so if you can recognize it, that's huge, because as you mentioned, you can course correct, you can set up the boundaries that you need in order to protect yourself, right, from crashing and burning again, right? So no, that's awesome. I think that's an amazing pro, guys. Check it out. Do you guys get that?
No, it's interesting because the way I know that I'm heading towards burnout is I start to have escape fantasies is what I think about them. So I start to think about, it used to be escaping medicine were the fantasies, maybe I'll just go work at a store where I don't have all this responsibility, or now it's maybe I just need a month off, or I need to just go to Vancouver for a weekend with nobody, so I just have some time to myself, or and I've learned that when my brain starts thinking that's kind of my first sign that I'm getting a bit burnt out, and I probably don't need a month off, or I don't need a weekend alone, because what I learned from dealing with different episodes of burnout is that actually doesn't fix it, right? No. I took take time off, have a bit of a holiday, but if you don't fix the underlying stuff, then you're just as burnt out when you come back.
Absolutely.
Or sometimes it's harder.
Yeah, because then you had to have harder to come back, and you had to have adjusted your schedule such that you could take that time off, right? If you're talking about,
and then you have more, yeah,
and then so you're under even more stress when you return. So, yeah. You're still the same you, whether you're on vacay or not. So
Yeah.
definitely digging deep and figuring out what the underlying issue is and then trying to attack it that way.
And I've learned, for me anyways, one of the big things about burnout and stuff is just what I'm thinking. So like, for an example, this week, I was on holidays last week. I'm coming back to the office. One of my practice partners had to leave for a family emergency last night. And so then I realized there's only two of us. It's a group practice. There's only two of us during the week, but for the first 2 days, it's just me. I'm fully booked.
Wow.
Plus we normally do a drop-in
Right.
clinic that the person that had to leave for a family emergency is doing. So I could totally freak out. That would be an option. But if I just kind of keep my brain calm and just keep whatever happens, I'll get through it. The work will get done. Everything's going to be okay. I will end my day feeling far better than if I let myself freak out.
Absolutely.
Like if I let myself freak out, I will inevitably be less efficient in those visits that I'm trying to accomplish, get further behind, not get notes done, be bringing notes home. And for me, my burnout, a lot of it was that, all the stuff I was dragging along outside of the office that I was never getting done.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I just stay calm, I just focus, I just do what I can do and do it efficiently, and know that it'll get done, then, I'll be more efficient in my visits. I'll get my notes done more effectively, and I'll finish the day probably tired, but not totally wiped.
Right. No, that's good. It's good to have that game plan. It's amazing that you touch on, obviously you have coaching expertise because you are really touching on those elements of mindset that are so powerful. Like you basically have affirmations that you tell yourself, like, just be calm. This will all work out. And as a result, your mindset is such that you are more open to the possibilities of how can you make this work out instead of freaking out like, we all want to do when we see something like that or we're in a situation like that. And it just makes all the difference. So thank you so much for sharing that perspective.
Mindset is everything. Like the more I do this stuff, particularly in the weight realm, like mindset and managing your mind is the puzzle piece. Like it's so more important than just what diet you're going to follow or here's a food plan, because it's what determines whether or not you actually follow that, right?
Right.
And so like the more I do it, I really believe more and more that what you think is, and managing that is one of the most important things you can do in your life.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to fear, that's a big right? Like,
you said that, like when you felt that fear, well, you did it anyway, right? You knew that you were going to be going up against the grain for what is, the typical thought process or thought belief of the group in Canada, right? Like, this is not like paying attention to obesity medicine, paying attention to the intricacies of it, and not just the basic, hey, eat less, work more, work out more philosophy. That's completely like you're in a line and then literally everybody in the line steps backward and you're standing up front, so that's huge, that you had that mindset to just basically say, hey, you know what, I am afraid of this, but you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. And look at how amazing it turned out.
I think that's something I learned is the things that, it sounds cliche because I think it's out there in like, little Instagram posts and stuff. But I really think the things that feel most scary are probably the ones that are most worth doing.
Amen, sister. I'm with you on that one.
Except for jumping off like a really high height, like it just will never be worth doing, or handling snakes.
How about this?
Those are fears
things that like, kind of shake you a little bit, but are not physically dangerous to you. How about that? Yeah. Those are definitely worth doing.
Yeah. Like the ones that, where the fear is based in, I think like fear, like a self-doubt fear or, like kind of self-esteem type, those fears I think are always worth like just doing it.
Absolutely.
And I think what I've also learned for myself anyways is the fear is actually a sign that I'm doing it right.
Yes.
Right. Like, it's so easy to blame or feel fear and think, oh, I need to step back because that's evolutionary. Right. But in this sort of scenario, like starting a podcast and stepping out of comfort zone, reaching out. The fear is actually a sign that you're pushing outside of your comfort zone and growing. And so it's a sign you're actually doing it right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. Because that is the thing. I say this because I'm like, I am facing a fear of mine by doing this podcast. People know this, I think, but I'll say it again. I'm facing my fear of public speaking in part by doing this podcast. The other piece of facing that fear is actually getting up on stage and talking to a bunch of people, which is a huge fear of mine. I literally have this fear where my palms get sweaty. I get palpitations. I can't sleep the night before. I keep thinking there's going to be broccoli in my teeth and I'm going to trip and fall face first on the stage. I'm going to forget everything I'm supposed to say, like all the things, right? All the recordings are in my mind. And, it's that every single time when you feel that and you're like, should I do this? Or there's a position that's coming up and maybe you don't have all the qualifications for it, but you're like, man, I don't know. I'm kind of afraid to put myself out there. That's when you should do it. Because even if you don't get the position, I mean, this is a thing, right? This is and particularly as women, our mindset is just such that we don't always, think in this way, but we don't always say I'm going to go for this, even if I don't have all the check boxes ticked, because I feel like I have to have all the check boxes ticked to be perfect for the position. Whereas our other halves, the men, they tend to say, oh, I only have one of the things, or I have none of the things, so I'm going to do it anyway. And they don't see it as, maybe I won't get the position. They're seeing it as, if I don't get the position, that's okay, because now they know that I have interest in this, and the next time a position comes up, they'll put me in it, or they'll take me as on for the position, and then I will just learn on the job. This is how they think, right? At least, I don't know, according to my husband. And so, so when we have that fear and we're like, of course, not a dangerous thing, like now, not getting eaten by snakes or, having to fall from a great height or whatever, none of that stuff, none of that physical danger stuff. But the stuff, like you said, where you have that self-doubt. So, going for that position or starting that podcast or standing up for something you believe in a public arena or whatever that thing is. And you feel that I don't know if I should do this. Am I good enough? I don't think I have all the qualifications. I don't think I'm the right person. Just putting that aside and just stepping out. Don't even think about it. What is her name? Mel something. She has a 3-second rule. Mel Robbins talks about that. She talks about that 3-second rule. She's like, just go. Oh no, it's 5-second rule. She's like, just count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just go for it.
Nice.
If you take a longer time to process, you just won't do it. Now, again, the caveat is nothing that's physically dangerous. Okay, guys, nothing physically dangerous. These are things that you do in your life that give you a little bit of angst, a little bit of fear, but you should go for them. Do them anyway. Because on the other side of fear, guess what? Victory.
It's fantastic. I think of this in terms of jumping off a dock into a cold lake, partly because that's one of my favorite things to do in life. But, when you're standing on the edge of the dock and you're like, it's going to be cold, I don't want to jump in. And if you overthink it, then it's going to be really hard. Or you try and creep in with your feet first and it's cold, 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 and it gets colder. But if you just count down, I've taught my kids to count us down 3, 2, 1. And then if we don't jump, to go chicken back, if we don't jump in. But so count yourself down, just jump. And then once you're off the ledge, you can almost relax a little bit because it's inevitable, right? Once you hit the submit button or hit the send button of something you're afraid to do, it's inevitable. You've done it. You can relax. And then on the other side, it's actually pretty fun. Once you're in the cold water, it's not so cold and you can have fun.
Right.
But standing there on the edge can feel so scary and so intimidating to take that leap. So that's what I think of personally when I am kind of picturing hesitating on something, as I picture just jumping off the dock into the lake, have a good swim.
Definitely. That's a great analogy. And I think that is an awesome way to kind of wrap up our conversation. It has been such an awesome chat with you. Oh my God, I really do feel like we're at the coffee shop. For real. Are you having tea or coffee?
It's been awesome.
What are you having? Tea? Coffee?
I was in a hurry, so I have old water in a mug, so I haven't drinking any.
Okay, gotcha. And I have to go downstairs and make me some hot chocolate in a little bit. But yes, super awesome chatting with you and learning all about what you're up to. And I hope that everybody's I'm going to put in the show notes, but the podcast available on all platforms, right?
It is. Yeah.
Awesome. So, and then I'm going to go over and subscribe myself. So leading by example, guys, you got to go and get listening to Dr. Key's podcast. Okay.
Let me know what you think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, so we'll have that. And then we have to do our little tradition that this is how we end all the episodes, right? So, the fill in the blanks. And, the first one is, fearless freedom means.
And I said, accepting that fear is a normal part of reaching and growing, not something to stop you.
Awesome. And then if I am fearless, I will
help so many people.
And I know you are. You probably are already. You are already. And then last but not least, my battle cry is,
I will figure it out.
Yes, that's great. And let me know what you do.
Yeah, well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, because I know that today is particularly more busy than the typical. So really appreciate it.
This is the most relaxing part of my day, so it's been great.
Oh, was it? Okay, well, good. Hopefully it'll put you in the mindset for tackling, whatever comes your way a little bit later on.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yes,
I enjoy your podcast, so it's been a treat to be on it.
And I am so glad that you accepted to come on, so I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us today on this journey. Fear is all around us. It strives to stop us from achieving our greatness. We have the tools to be overcomers. By sharing our stories, supporting each other, and doing self-reflection, we can do this. If you found value in this conversation today, please be sure to subscribe to and share this podcast with your friends. By going to your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review and a 5-star rating, you will help to get the word out about it. And that is much appreciated. Thanks again for spending time with us. I appreciate your time and your attention. It is my hope that you will punch fear in the face today and that you will be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.